You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a survey company representative ringing a person to obtain some information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello?
Hello? Who is this?
Hello, I'm a representative of the Tally-Ho Survey Company, and I'd like to ask you a few questions regarding exercise.
Ah, that's an interesting subject.
Yes, we think so too.
But I'm afraid I'm a bit busy at the moment.
Don't worry, this will only take about 4 minutes at the most. It's 10:25 now, so it will all be over by 10:30.
Well, all right, if it's that short.
It will be. So, one of the first things I need to know is where you are. That is, which suburb or area of the city. The last client was in Blackburn, for example.
Blackburn, that's close to me. I'm in Box Hill.
Another eastern suburb, then. I have a friend in Box Hill, too. Interesting place. Now, I need your approximate age for this survey. Are you younger than 20, between 20 and 29, 30 and 39, and so on?
I'll turn 40 in a few months, so that puts me in the 40 to 49 age group.
Well, that's in a few months, so right now you're in the 30 to 39.
Oh, right, so put that then.
OK. Now, I need to know your occupation. The last caller was a housewife, for example. The one before that, a teacher.
I used to be a teacher too, teaching cookery.
And now?
Now you can just put domestic duties. Actually, I hope to begin a new job soon as a cook, but that won't be for some time yet. I have to wait for my husband's restaurant to open.
Cook? That sounds interesting. But it's domestic duties for now. OK. That just leaves some information about your family. This is not obligatory at all, so if you don't want to answer, that's fine.
What sort of information exactly?
Oh, it's very broad. Married with children, single mother, that sort of thing. The last customer said she was a single mother.
I'm married and not a mother. Put married, no children.
I'm married with children myself, but I'll put in your details. And that finishes the profile and just leaves the actual survey itself if you're ready to proceed.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
All right, let's begin the survey now about your exercise habits.
I'm afraid I don't exercise much at all.
Well, the main question is in what form you take your exercise, however little that may be. For example, in just cleaning. Do you clean the house?
My husband does the cleaning, actually, but I walk to the supermarket and shops very often, up to 4 times a week.
I'll put that then, unless there's something else.
Nothing else, really. But I diet. I'm very strict about what I eat. Oh, and I do yoga, although that's not very energetic. More a form of relaxation and to tighten my muscles.
They're both important, of course. But what about sport? Do you undertake any sporting activities? This could be very infrequent. In the past, for example.
My husband plays basketball at the local school and I sometimes watch. When he was younger, he was in a basketball team, but I never participated.
Have you done anything at all?
I used to hike in a nearby national park.
Well, that's a definite physical activity, so I'll put that, but not basketball. All right, that just leaves future exercise intentions. Do you plan or expect to do, at some stage, any form of exercise?
I once dreamt of doing modern dance, but that's never going to happen. Realistically, I'm thinking about going swimming at the local aquatic centre, although my husband thinks we should just jog. I can't see myself doing that though. Too tiring.
I can understand. I used to jog too, and it really makes you sweat. I'd say swimming's a much better option.
But I'll be starting this job as a cook in my husband's restaurant. I imagine I'll be very tired doing all those late shifts. But if I have any energy left over, I might go to the aquatic centre to release some stress.
All right, well, that's the end of the survey. Thank you very much for your time.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear a talk about the main points of interest and the improvements made in the area. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Thank you all for coming to our community meeting. As you know, we're excited to unveil our improvement plan as we look forward to the influx of tourists in the summer months. I'll start with a quick overview of the main points of interest in the area for anyone who may not quite know his or her way around yet, and then I'll get to the improvements made. First off is my favourite, the Science Museum, which is on the corner of St George Road. If you have not visited yet, I encourage you to go before the busy season. It is absolutely spectacular. There is even a flight simulator you can try out. Just west of the Science Museum is the National History Museum. It's a sight not to be missed as well, with each floor devoted to a different era in our nation's history. There are special exhibits for children with interactive games and fun history lessons too. If you're looking for parking, it is available on the intersection of Queen Street and South King Street in the car park. Standard hourly and daily rates do apply. The best place for souvenirs is the shopping mall, though it gets extremely busy during peak times. You can get there from the Tube or the entrance on Timber Road, just south of Cornwell Road. This area has students everywhere, usually from the primary school across the street from the shopping mall. Classes often take field trips and engage in guided tours through the area. So that's the overview of the main sites, and hopefully by now I've given you a general idea of the area.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now I'm going to outline the improvements we have made in our efforts to make the experience even better for each and every one of our visitors. You probably noticed when you first drove into the car park this morning that there is now additional signage to help avoid confusion. The directions were not entirely clear at first, so we have increased the number of one-way signs indicating the correct direction of traffic flow. Not far from there, in line with our mission of giving back to the community, we constructed a brand new playground for the primary school. It is really something to be excited for. The equipment is state-of-the-art and includes swings, a small climbing wall, and even an obstacle course. Now we'll head north and take a look at the Science Museum. In response to our feedback from past visitors to the museum, there is now free information available outlining not only upcoming IMAX showings, but also natural wonders like meteor showers, eclipses, and other cool natural events. The Science Museum isn't the only museum improving the experience of its visitors. The National History Museum has added an entire new wing to its facility to accommodate the large crowds of people gathering to see the Civil War exhibit, Inventions Timeline exhibit, and other wonderful sections of the museum. The increase in space will definitely give a more calm, comfortable experience for visitors. And finally, remember when there was actually a line at the mall entrance from the tube station? It was terrible trying to get anywhere from the tube because foot traffic got so backed up sometimes. We have addressed that by adding another entry point into the mall from the other end of the platform to disperse the crowd. So those are the major improvements we have made. Clearly, having too many people that want to visit and enjoy what our community has to offer the public is a good problem to have, and I am confident that we have made the changes necessary to accommodate the growing interest in the area. As always, we welcome any questions, comments, or concerns about the new improvement plan. In a few minutes, I will open up the floor for questions, but you can also contact me or any other board member by email or through the city website. Thank you for coming, and I now encourage you to stay for the questions and answers panel occurring between now and 10:30.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear two students, Dylan and Emily, discussing the techniques they use when listening to lectures. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Hi, Emily. What did you think of that lecture?
A bit hard to follow, but I have some good lecture listening note-taking strategies which really help, so I can review the lecturer's message later.
Lecture listening note-taking strategies? Review it later? That sounds interesting. I must admit, I struggle a bit to take down the gist of what I hear. Look at my notes.
Well, I can see a basic problem immediately. You're writing full words, such as century, when all you need is a C. And don't write increase, just draw an up arrow. And why write thousand when a TH will do?
I see. Just use symbols. That's not a bad idea at all.
It's the most basic strategy, allowing you to record information at a faster pace. These lecturers can talk faster than others too, so you don't want to waste any time. But you need to be very familiar with your set of symbols.
Why?
Because you'll have to look at these notes days, weeks, or even months afterwards when you begin writing your essay. So you'll need to be able to interpret them at a later stage.
I think I can do this, even by looking at your notes. Imed must mean immediately.
But regarding the lecture as a whole, I knew the professor would be giving a set of specific recommendations and comparing two alternative approaches, so I formatted my page in advance, adding the features consistent with the nature of what I was going to hear.
I think I need an example of what you mean.
Well, look at my page. Before the lecture, I drew large headings saying recommendations. You should always draw these, and I drew a table saying Approach 1 and Approach 2. At the end, I drew a flowchart, as obviously the final recommendation would be a step-by-step approach. Then I was prepared in advance to simply fill in the spaces.
Wow! Now that's clever.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Your advice about note-taking sounds great, but I still have one question, Emily. How are you able to design your page in advance? I mean, how can you predict the nature of the talk and know which design is likely to work best?
It's rather obvious when you think about it. What's your next lecture about?
Legal studies.
Well, that suggests to me that you'll need a flowchart, since the judicial system has a very logical, do this first, do that second approach, which must be followed in that order. You know, all the processes that happen in the courtroom and the procedures that must take place to ensure complete legality.
Sure, that's the way law is, very linear and orderly. But what about culture studies? That's just a mass of comparisons of different cultures.
Which tells you that you'll need a table where, in tabular form, you can efficiently write down information.
But often the lecture's not that simple. The professor throws in a really complex mix of ideas.
Then use a spider graph, like the web a spider makes, where there's a central idea around which you attach all the associated thoughts and ideas and impressions.
I see. I think I understand. And that would be very quick too, very efficient. I like that. But what about management theory? How would you approach that?
The same as with culture studies. I'd use a network, which is basically the same as a spider graph, linking thoughts, although this time there are directions involved. It is this element that makes it different, the fact that the thoughts go one way and not the other.
OK, has directions. It sounds logical. And what about the other subjects, such as political science? There's no predictable order to that.
Well, for that I'd just put my notes in a line, that is, in linear or straight line fashion, and these notes would use symbols, of course, to save time.
OK, that just leaves mass media.
For that, I wouldn't have any special design at all. As you say, sometimes it's impossible to predict in what way lecturers will present their information, in which case the best you can do is pre-write headings, but not specific, just general, as in Main 1, Main 2, Sub 1, 2 and 3, and so on.
OK.
But always be prepared to adapt to the nature of the talk, using any one of the other methods if it becomes appropriate at the time.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture about factors you should consider when creating advertising materials and the effects they can have on your product sales. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Hello class, and welcome back to Marketing Strategies. This week I will expand upon last week's lecture by talking about factors you should consider when creating advertising materials and the effects they can have on your product sales. Lesson 1. Limit your advertising to the geographic area of your target market. Though you may have a product that people want in a large area, the distance that customers are willing to travel is a significant factor in their choice of where to purchase that product. Take this example. If you're really hungry and decide you want a burrito, would you choose the restaurant that is a block from your apartment, or the one that is just as good or even slightly better, across town? Of course, you'd pick the closer restaurant. Next, there's the method of communication to your target market. How do you decide among radio ads, TV commercials, flyers, or even word of mouth? While we often think of the visual presentation of ads, there's much more to advertising than the look. Studies show that consumers are much more likely to remember advertising slogans if there's also a sound plate. Did you know that your sense of smell is closely linked with memory? Think about Mandy's candy store up the road. Every time you walk past it, you can just smell the chocolate, right? I bet you can almost smell it now. Just mentioning the name brings about the smell memory and, in turn, a chocolate craving. What better way to sell chocolate bars? Obviously, sometimes appealing to the senses isn't the most practical way to advertise. For example, it's a good idea to come up with a marketing strategy that adapts to the product, especially digital products. The flexibility of this kind of products is extremely important, so it's very common for advertisers to form one single layout for all of their ads, the visual, the medium, even the majority of the content, and simply update the ad each time they come out with a new version. Remember, advertising is all about stirring up the right feeling in your potential customers, whether by stimulating the senses, appealing to the intellect, and so on. Once the customer experiences the ad, the important thing is his or her reaction. Someone could love the ad you made, but unless he or she considers buying the product, you've failed to get the reaction you were looking for. So once you have successfully reached your target customer and you have his or her business, often you'll want to expand to a larger market. More often than not, the same marketing strategies you used in your small campaign may not work for a larger audience. The larger you scale your product, the more factors you must consider. For instance, Apple operates worldwide, so they must tailor their advertising for each market they enter. Often you'll see Apple ads on international flights that appear not only in English, which is the lingua franca of most regions, but also in the native languages of the majority of passengers. I travelled to Russia last week, and it was really interesting to see the same Nike ad that I've seen 100 times, except this time it was in Russian. Okay, going back to the medium of the advertisement, even after choosing to create print ads instead of radio announcements, television commercials, etc., there is more to consider. If you print your ad in a newspaper, it will be read by a far different audience than if you print your ad in a popular magazine. Would you put an ad for the new Justin Bieber album in a newspaper? Probably not, because that product is most suitable for youths. Let's face it, do you know anyone under the age of 25 that buys a newspaper? No. Now let's try a few strategy exercises. Imagine you're a company that is aiming to improve the environment by making products that reduce human waste. How would you advertise your product? Clearly it would send the wrong message if you put up flyers or other materials that cause lots of waste paper. Consider instead putting commercials on the Health Channel or buying ad space on websites like UNESCO. Or here's another example. What is one great place to advertise suntan lotion? How about a swimming pool? It has the exact group of people that need the product. All right, one last thing. Let's say you're filming a commercial for a water filter pitcher. What would be good scenery to use for the background? Think about somewhere calm and relaxing with clean, fresh water. Can't you see how much more effective a commercial with the beautiful scenery and flowing rivers of a national park would be than, say, water dripping from a tap? So to wrap things up today, think about the geography of your target market, the type of marketing material you should use, and the most effective way to appeal to the customer in order to make a successful ad campaign. That is all I have for you today. Make sure to read through Chapter 8 for Monday if you have not done so already. Okay, now I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.